So are we related?
If you want to be related.
Well, we may not have any, we may not have any choice. But it looks of it. I've been there.
Yeah.
Big thing is there.
Yeah,
We'll see if this appears in the morning sun.
can't pick your relatives.
I gotta remember, when she turns this thing on, I gotta stop.
Okay, we are recording and live streaming when you are ready.
And it just turned 10 o'clock on my phone, so that's gotta be right. We'll call the meeting to order, the Finance Administration Committee. We have approval of the agenda. Is there anything that anybody would like to add to the agenda? All right. Then we'll call to the public. Doesn't look like any public, anybody online?
There is not at this time, Mr. Chairman.
I'm just waiting for that first time.
It's gonna happen.
We'll get down to our first item of business, and which is review and assess the semi-annual 2% application from Isabella County Administration Office requesting $80,000 for the feasibility study for Isabella County Secure Juvenile Residential Resource Facility. So I looked at it and it's a start. How do you know the 80,000 is going to be enough for the study?
Don't, that's why I put 20 with it. Mars, I really don't. You know, unfortunately, I work in urgent and important quadrant. So it was urgently important. I got the staff report done in time, and I honestly have not garnered a professional estimate in this regard. I'm going off the estimate of what the MRF feasibility cost and basically doubling that, right?
So you ballparked it, which is.
I ballparked it. That's a good way to say that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I do have, you know, we are working with some very adept architects and engineers on the jail, on the correctional facility project. So I think they could help me with my ballpark to ascertain, but
It's a starting point.
And our architectural firm for the jail also did feasibility study in 2016 on this whole campus, which included the jail.
Included the jail.
So they did
They're
do
familiar.
feasibility study in 2016. It did not consider another type of use for that building. It just looked at the systems and the structure.
Given their
So-
familiarity, that shouldn't, we should.
I would
Shouldn't be
think
that
that
hard for
proved
them to-
beneficial at
yeah,
some
have
point in
them
the
come through.
process.
Yeah.
But I do say in this application that we would go for, you know, like we would put out an RFP for those services for sure, for this type
Yeah.
of thing. You know, we don't want to predetermine
No.
who's going to do it, but I would think that integrated architecture that has the sheriff's office and correctional facility project might have a leg up if they were to bid because of
think?
the work they've done in
Right.
the past. And we know that, you know, the plumbing, electrical, mechanical, those systems are not worth reusing maybe in a new application of the building, but if we do it, if we rehab the building to a new purpose, maybe the HVAC and the you know, that would have to be reworked anyway. It's gonna be a new configuration, right? It's not gonna
Almost,
look anything like it does now. It's gonna be-
you're gonna start over, basically. really.
Except with maybe the things, well, that's what the study would tell us, I
Exactly,
guess,
yeah,
exactly.
that's
The
what that
point.
means,
It
yeah.
would tell us what we could reuse in the application. And this would be specifically for that purpose too. We're looking at it for that purpose, but as the application says, I think if we design it with some thoughtful design and programming in mind,
Mhm.
I think we're always going to have a use for the building, even if it can't be or it isn't a secure juvenile facility. I think if we're thoughtful about the design, we're always going to have some kind of use for it.
Looking to the future. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I know we also talked about the study for the MRF, looking maybe at a regional. And I'm aware that Clare County from the Northern Michigan Counties Association is looking at having their own juvenile detention facility. I don't know what building they're looking at, or if they're thinking about building new, or what it is, but I think we can go it alone. But maybe we need to get into a discussion with Clare County. What they're doing may be adequate for both of our counties, and we could join in that project.
Or
in
vice
terms of a
versa.
regional effort.
Yeah, yeah. Absolutely.
And I think there's something going on in Traverse City too for I don't know if they're on their possibility of getting state monies for a facility, but one of the elected reps indicated they were favorably trying to get money towards that facility.
There's certainly been a lot of state activity and attention to the matter in the last couple of years, right? With the juvenile justice reform and the governor's task force. And then her, right after, on the heels of that, specifically juvenile residential committee to look at standards and to look at how, available, but how can we place youth in available beds throughout the state? So there's definitely more talk and hopefully funds to follow. But I think a partnership it makes a lot of sense in that regard. It's a common need.
And they may be bent on going their own way, and
Right.
Right.
we'll know that it's a
Now, where do we currently send juveniles who need to be in a juvenile facility? Are they sent to different locations?
Yes,
Around
I
the
know. Yes, Jackson, I think.
All the way to
is-
Jackson?
Yep,
'Cause I saw
I
that
think
in the,
that's the
You'll
closest.
see Highfields on the,
that's what I saw in here was
Yeah.
Jackson.
that's near Jackson.
Jackson is the closest. I think there's been some UP placements and out of state.
out of state.
So we're sending kids from this area, to Jackson
Yeah.
and further away.
Yeah,
So the most damning thing, it's not that it's expensive, right? That's damning too, but the most damning thing is then the support structure for those youth
Yeah.
are hundreds or more miles away. They're not involved in their treatment or their recovery or,
well, many of them probably not able to make that trip.
right, right.
See, that's where, yeah, you get,
Right.
that's a disadvantage for those, the
Mhm.
young people that really need the help.
So,
Paramount. It's
Yeah.
paramount.
well, this study will come up with probably a recommended number of beds based on what we could supply.
Mhm.
And then it will go further in terms of mental health structure. I know there's a lot of staffing requirements on these facilities. Would that look at staffing requirements too?
Yes, absolutely. Just like the MRF, kind of like the MRF feasibility study is doing, yes, not only infrastructure, but staffing and programming as well. What is it actually gonna look like? There's a whole lot of potential here for sure.
Okay.
A lot of potential to do it right.
Commissioner Holm, I see you got all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, and you guys checked off about everything I had jotted down. So this is a great report. You've got a lot of info packed into 2 pages here. It's very concise.
Thank you.
And I like it. But tribal input, I think, is gonna be key on this, and they're gonna have to be a partner in this. And where the report talks about tribal input on programming, design and implementation, that's all going forward. That's gonna be very important, I think.
You as well.
I mean,
Having our own facility, allows us to design our own programming and have family input. We have
correct.
our own kids from Isabella County, and their families are close.
Mhm.
I mean, you already touched on that, but this is exciting. This is one of the biggest things I've seen come across. I mean, if you can use the word exciting for what we
Well-
do here, but it is.
The need is definitely there.
The need is
right?
there.
That's- I really see.
I
the
talk
need.
to anybody in law enforcement or mental health, and they all will keep drumming that point, is that a lot of kids, some of them might go to Highfields down by Jackson or the UP, but a lot of them just don't get placed because there's nowhere to put them. So they get sent back home into the same
Into bad, into
difficult
similar-
situations
yeah,
that
tough
they,
situations,
that
right?
they've been in
Yeah.
and don't get the
Which-
help they need.
And then I think, compounds, right?
Yeah.
The molehills become mountains. And thank you, Court Administrator Carrie Curtis, for pointing that out and adding that into this application, because I think that's the true tough thing when there is no place for these kids. Even
Right.
Hear sheriff say there's no place to take them, and they take them back home where maybe that's the environment that triggered the behavior in the first place.
Yeah.
For one time, we talked
Mm.
about our childcare fund and we thought, wow, that fund's doing really well. We haven't spent as much money. And Carrie Curtis said, well, that's because there is a placement for a lot of these kids. So we're just not providing that service for them. That's why the fund sometimes
Right.
looks good. The bottom line looks good on that childcare fund at times.
So there's this big gap. Big- This big black hole. that
Definitely a need.
These kids are
yeah.
falling into.
And
Yeah.
the raise the age has 17-year-olds as juveniles again, so that's made a huge difference.
Creating more of a demand for something like
Exactly.
this.
And not just for us, but for us, I think the most important thing is our youth and
Right.
keeping them here in our community.
Great. Especially in this area, right? As opposed to sending.
So let's see if it's feasible. Step one.
I don't see any problem moving this on to the work session, but I don't know if you could make contact with the county administration and get some background
Claire.
information, see what Clare County is planning. I think we need to do it as a, adjoining county, just to,
Or at least look at that,
Yeah.
consider it, yeah.
Or at least let them, start that conversation so they know we're looking too. I did for what it was worth, call down to let Mac know, right, that we're thinking of this just because they're connected in so many
Right.
places down there. I thought it would behoove us to just to be on their mind with it.
It,
Great suggestion.
and second suggestion possibly, is this a time where we would want to involve the Saginaw Chippewa Indian tribe in discussions or talking about this
Well, this is the
feasibility
first
study?
To an
discussion with,
extent, we have.
Yeah.
Already?
Informally.
We have
Yeah,
been. yes.
Okay.
yeah.
All right, good.
Yeah.
They're,
Yeah, so those
loop.
roundtable events that
Yeah.
happen in conjunction with the 2% grant
Mhm.
application process. Basically, county leadership goes and sits at round tables
Yeah, we were-
with
yeah, right.
tribal membership to talk about what programs we might be putting
Okay.
up for funding through the 2% process. So yes, we were there present this last time. Well, you were too.
Yep.
We talked a lot about specifically
Okay.
funding a feasibility study for this, and they really helped, that conversation helped to build this application because
okay.
I raised my hand and said, I want to talk about a juvenile detention facility. Well, you notice it's called a secure juvenile residential resource center, right? It's a whole different connotation to
Mhm.
the end product, I guess, and to what we might actually be able to accomplish in the facility. So
Okay.
efforts more, secure. So, it's by placement, if you will, but
Mhm.
efforts more on programming and successful outcomes.
I think it's safe to say those conversations were met with some interest from tribal leaders.
All right, so just from my standpoint, being at that 2%, I know I was led to believe by someone from Wademan that actual tribal leadership was not there. People that sit on, a lot of them were not there. So that's on my question is, I know there were several people that are involved in this process of the 2% funding, but as far as tribal leadership, I'm just wondering how familiar, how if they're kept up to speed on potential 2% applications and how that process works. So I guess that was my question is, tribal leadership, are they aware that we are moving in this direction?
Yes, I believe
Okay,
they are.
okay.
Yes.
All right.
I actually started this conversation, oh gosh, would it have been a year ago, Jessica, when I botched it? And they sent me the information to attend the roundtable. So I went. I didn't know I was supposed to invite you guys and elected officials and department, whoever it made sense to go. So I sat there at a table with about 6 tribal council members, all looking at me. What's going on in the county? And so I started to talk about that facility over there and what we could maybe do with it when the sheriff and his residents move out. So that was Teresa Peters Jackson, that Chief
Yeah,
Jackson,
Chief
that,
Jackson, yeah.
yes, that I had and she was
Okay.
she's actually who kind of motivated me to, yes, we need to talk about that. Yes, you need to further that. Yes, you need to keep
Okay,
that
good.
on the table. So
Yep.
it's their use too.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Right,
That's why I want to have,
it's their
it's
use too.
important. Okay, thank you.
the only other people we might want to include in at this point is just to make aware, Senator Hall and Representative Nyer.
Yes.
I mean, if we already know there's
Yes.
representatives up in the Traverse City looking for funding for their facility.
Yep.
If that's in discussion,
They should
let
be,
them know we're interested.
should be involved. Try to get as
Yes,
many
sir.
levels.
I don't think we're gonna be able to do this without significant state funding.
Agreed.
So I'll make the motion to move the review and assess the semi-annual 2% application from the Isabella County Administration Office requesting $80,000 for the feasibility study for an Isabella County Secure Juvenile Residential Resource Facility to the work session. Support. Been moved and supported. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. That moves forward. Next item is fiscal year 2022 draft audit discussion.
So the official formal presentation of the audit document of our fiscal 22 will be presented by Raymond Robson next Tuesday at your full board work session. Generally, that is CPA Doug Leader. Doug has a scheduling conflict this year, so he has arranged for someone else from the firm to present. So it won't be a familiar face, but it won't change what is being presented, certainly. So in the staff report for the draft audit report, we talk about the 3 documents that you receive. The big ones, the financial statements. You've got a smaller federal, what they call the single audit. They specifically look at how we spend federal dollars, and that's the term they give to that. And then the board communication letter is the 3rd piece. So those are the three things that we receive from them. And basically, there could be a few changes before Tuesday. We don't anticipate any, and they certainly wouldn't be material at this point to the financial statements. So what you see before you should be the final document. Just a few pages. I'm sure you guys have read and tied all the numbers and read all the narrative. But I want to draw attention to page 33, where we talk about net change in fund balance. That's always the big news. How did we end the year? I came a couple last meeting, maybe to give you a preliminary on that. And we are adding just over 710, almost to $711,000 to general fund balance at the end of our fiscal 22. You can see that on page 33. If we flip to just another page more to 35, 36, this is basically comparing budget to actual. So on at the top of page 36, we should really try to find these next time. I'm just noticing the difficulty of we keep improving.
No, it's okay.
So originally, if you look down to almost to the end on page 36, where it has net change in fund balance to the left, we follow down the original budget of the general fund. We adopted it expecting to use 310,000 in fund balance. Throughout the year, we amended that budget so that the final budget was going to add 464,000 to fund balance. So we knew, things were improving. But the actual ended up being 710,000. I think that is a lot to do with the grant sheriff was able to secure too for the COVID expenses of like $350,000 that paid for almost our entire expenses for inmate healthcare that year because of the great record keeping that they do. I think that's the main difference between budget and actual. I think not the main reason for the 710,000 adding. We can go to page. Well, it doesn't say in here why, but we can go to page 91 to talk about what we were gonna do with this fund balance. But I feel the main reason we added so much more is at budget time, we were very conservative. I feel like with what the turbine revenue was going to be. Remember the taxpayer had changed. It was the first year that they were coming on 100%, so we were a little nervous about where that was gonna land. So we were conservative, so the property taxes that we brought in for the turbines versus budget was about $1 million more. In addition to that, really, that was the big thing. Let's see, page 91, we are there off to the on the left side. This talks about what makes up your fund balance, right? We've got some non-spendable like inventories of things that just aren't cash to be paid. Restricted, there is you see no restricted funds in the general fund. Restricted is like if an outside entity puts a caveat or a restriction on the dollars. Committed, this is what the board can do. The Board of Commissioners has the ability to commit fund balance. And you'll see you've chosen to do that in general fund for the sheriff's office and correctional facility project to the tune of 1.2 million by the end of fiscal 22. Remember, just after the end of fiscal 22, you committed another 2.3 million. So that's didn't happen by September 30, so that's why it's not reflected here. The assigned fund balance is what I have the ability to assign through the audit process. So by the end of fiscal 22, we hadn't paid off our bond anticipation note. Remember, we didn't do that until this year. So it's a reflection of that point in time. We still had the 2.6 assigned for that. We've got 2 million in working capital. Just over, well, almost 1.2 million invested benefits. That amount is there to signify if we ever close our doors. It's basically a point in time of what we would owe employees for vested benefits, their PTO, their payouts. District health capital, central dispatch capital, those are based on the leases that we hold with them. In the lease language, we have to keep monies aside for repairs on those facilities. Claims liability is an amount that we get from MMRMA based on our current lawsuits and activity there. Court technology is a piece of certain fines that the court has. A piece of those fines get to go into this basically restricted line item that is only used for court technology. Subsequent year expenditures, that is the amount. I was having a hard time with this one, but that's the amount that our final budget for fiscal 22 says that we are going to add to fund balance, I believe. Are we gonna subsequent year expenditures? Help me with this. 2023 in the budget, what we say we're gonna use for fund balance. Thank you.
Carrie.
Has nothing to do with 22,
Mhm.
but the budget that's now adopted for 23. Thank you. Always have a hard time with that one. So those are things that we have to keep aside in the fund balance we know is coming, we know we have to pay for it. So even though we may have started with over 12 million of fund balance, the unassigned 4.4 million is what gets us attention, right? That's what we have available for other things. Aside from these things we just talked about that it's earmarked for. That percentage, when you take, Melissa, help me with the percentage, when we take 4.4 over general fund expenditures, right? That is how we figure the fund balance percentage. It's around maybe 19%, 20%. I think we figured that. So prior to this, before the board started to commit monies or monies were assigned to the jail project, those monies sat in fund balance. We might have known that's what we were going to spend it on, but they were sitting in the unassigned. So when you look at our audit online at Treasury, we had like a 46% fund balance, which is a little misleading, right? Because we had talked about using funds for specific purposes. This just solidifies that. Says this is what.
This is actually what we're gonna do.
Yes. Yes.
Clarifies.
It comes into play at negotiation time and, maybe recently in mediations, when and they can say, your fund balance is 46%.
No,
You can afford whatever raise we ask for. Not if the money is meant for other places. So it can be a really useful tool, especially as we're forecasting. Okay, so that's the good news. The audit report did come up with a significant deficiency. So that's a tough mark on us, right? And that's going to be noted in the single audit. And it's going to be the last couple pages of that smaller document, page 12. 13. It would be schedule of findings and question thoughts. So I guess this is kind of good news and bad news. Significant deficiency means that the auditors found things in regards to our internal controls over how the finances were reported, and they found some deficiencies there that were in what they consider material amounts. Not any one of them were considered material, but because they found a handful of them, it presents as a significant deficiency. So just talk about, they note here, they bullet point what these were. We had some retainage related to capital outlay in a drainage district that was not reported properly. Investments they want recorded at fair market value. So obviously we'll be working to do that going forward. At the MRF, we didn't have accounts receivable balanced by the end of the year. It's not that it was unreconcilable, it just wasn't reconcilable or reconciled by the end of the year. So it was basically the balance was overstated. Drainage district had another overstatement in their special assessments. And then because we are fiduciary on Union Township wastewater supply and the way we have to book the bond payments, it wasn't done entirely properly, and so the fund was overstated. So again, none of these individually would have caused Raymond to note them, but because we had all of them together, they said, well, this took a little more work on our part, right? So when they find these things, the county suggests to them entries to make it correct, and we do those entries. But this is them making sure that we're all aware that they had to do this type of extra work for us.
What I understand here is that you need to do a better job at reconciling prior to.
Absolutely, yes. And that's basically what it comes down to, right? When we have this, we have to put a corrective action plan in place when we have a significant deficiency or a material weakness, which this is not, thank gosh, a material weakness. So we put together the corrective action plan. It's actually in the audit document. So our corrective action plan is to, just like you said, put in a process to identify or record any necessary adjusting entries before the audit field work starts, basically. You know, we've certainly cut some resources from admin. You know, certainly resources in drains have changed over the last few years too. We've lost a little bit of historical knowledge there too. So I think this is a little part of our learning curve. I'm trying to, as you're very well aware, trying to determine did we cut too far? Is this a sign of that? I actually we talked about that and with the auditors too. I don't think that's a huge concern, but certainly plays into it.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, corrective action plan is on the back page. of
yes,
that.
it is. Where do we stand as far as beginning this process of putting that into effect? Are we instituting timetables as to when these necessary what do you call them, reconciliations are done? For you, for the auditors, are gonna need these done prior to, I understand that.
Mhm.
But do we have a schedule set up, or is that are we in the process, that's setting up a
That'll
schedule
be,
so
that'll
that,
be what we do. That'll be exactly what we do.
and will that be reported to us that all reconciliations are done prior to the audit, so that we know that they're done, so that this document is as accurate as possible?
I like that. That'll be part of the process. Absolutely. You have every right to request that, and I hope you write a tickler to know that generally our audit field work starts in the 1st of January, generally.
Right.
So we'll have October, November, December to do exactly what you're talking about.
Okay.
And it'll be right after budget adoption, so perfect time to
Okay.
focus on that.
So then what we're saying, and then hopefully we'll have in place the necessary procedures so that we can avoid this in the future,
Yes,
correct? Okay.
you got it. You got it. Continuous improvement.
When do we get the comments? I need to make comments.
Think we're
Okay,
there.
so is it page 90? Where's that page? I think I mentioned before, there's certain things that make me tingly.
Oh, boy.
One is parentheses. In this respect, parentheses. I get when I start seeing lots of parentheses in certain reports, it gets me, and I see a lot of them like one right after another, and then I look all the way down and they're all in parentheses. So I go to the expenditures on page 35 and I start looking and I'm going, okay, I see the original budget, final budget, actual, and then I see expenditures are under, and then under, and then under, and then under. So like I said, while I was on the verge of falling asleep when I got to that point, I found it hard to go to sleep after that because I saw every department was under budget. Which to me, I think is fantastic. I've seldom seen a P&L that, for me, it's P&L. So I'm thinking, when I'm reviewing store P&Ls for different stores that I work with, and I start seeing under budget, ooh, I get all excited. I'm thinking, ooh, I got a winner here. And also, again, kudos to all the folks that work for the county that went into,
They're pretty much
allow-
all in this room, so we all
Yeah.
thank you.
that's pretty impressive.
Yeah,
I gotta
everyone.
tell you. For me, boy, I tell you, I'd give anything to have a P&L that showed up like this on my desk. Because it's usually the other way around and it's like
Right.
big numbers going the wrong way. So,
Well, and I think a big kudos to the people at this table for demanding a process that involves budget amendments throughout the year, right?
mhm.
That's how we do process, and we look at it continuously to see if any of those percentages are so out of whack for an unexplained reason. We need to rob from
addressed.
Peter to pay Paul, and there's a lot of that goes on throughout the year to make sure every department
Falls in line.
falls in line. Well said.
Yeah.
When we all take turns for different reasons, right? For things out of our control, but when it's done that way, it's a little easier to keep them all.
Because when I look at a P&L, I'm an outlier guy. So like I see all these percentages and all these parentheses, so I start looking for the ones that aren't. And then as soon as I see one of those, man, I'm drilling down. I want to know why, what's the problem, what are we gonna do to fix it? So when I see this, that's a relief that,
Okay.
we've got very competent people taking care of business.
Well, if you see those and you still have your angst, please reach out to any one of us in this room, right?
Right. One other thing I wanted, so the thing is, if you look at this report, it looks like we're doing really, really well, right? So I'm thinking, if I weren't long-term focused like we're trying to be, I would think, hey, we're doing good. I can go chill, no worries, right? But then when you start looking at long-term budgets and long-term forecasts, you start realizing, well, maybe we're doing okay now, but we've got to be a little more cautious about what we plan on doing in the future moving forward. But I like the fact that the fact that we're doing really well now as far as controllables, what we can control. And then two, we've got in place a means by which we can look into the future and say, well, this is where we're going to be. We've got to continue this.
So for all those people that have been controlling expenses, we're gonna need to continue to do that, right? Long for the next
Sure.
foreseeable
some.
future, yes, unless something else changes, and we'll get into that later. But again, I just wanted to mention that. It's good to have both of those where we're doing okay now financially, but also have the means to look into the future and say, hey, maybe we just need to be a little more cautious about what we're spending our monies on and begin to make plans so that we stay financially viable. Dan, thank you.
Good comments, well stated.
So was there a reference in there about a continuing issue with the court? In your letter? Did I read that?
Yeah, so these were other matters that they found. Do those come out in the single audit, Melissa?
Those are in the third document. that has
Oh, the letter,
letter.
the letter.
Yep.
Yeah, so there's a trial court bank account that does not list the treasurer as a signer. That's their issue. In the past, it used to be that they had it, they kind of kept that bank account to themselves at trial court. They did their own reconciliation and it wasn't shared. That used to be part of that comment, I believe. That part has been resolved. They are now sharing with us that reconciliation. We're sharing it with Treasurer's Department. But my understanding is Treasurer is still not a signer on the trial court account. And that is why this is written up as it's nothing like a significant deficiency. But they see it as certainly not best practice. And as the treasurer, he should be a signer on all accounts. The cheese stands alone over there, right? Like the courts are a separate entity
Yeah.
from us. And I think that's what stems, where this
Where it
stems
stemmed
from.
from, right? But he still should be.
He still should be
Yeah.
a signer on that account. As far as our auditors, as far as we believe, yeah, it's best practice.
So I'm entering my 9th year and I think the last 8 audits have had that on every year. I mean, what's the hang up? They just refuse to, I mean, it's gotta be state statute, right? That treasurers,
Law says county treasurer shall be responsible for all funds. That's brought into the county. Their argument is those are not county funds, but the law also states that what the definition of county funds and it takes into encompass all funds. So, yeah, sheriff's department, same way. Got a sheriff accounts over there that I'm not a signer on, or maybe I'm a signer on, but it's handled separately, which I totally disagree with. On that as well.
so how do we
How do you
finally
rectify that?
resolve that
Yeah.
after years and years and
I think
years?
this is a good start. Just talking about it in an open meeting and making sure you guys are aware that that's going on.
So do we need to invite certain individuals to the table and talk about this?
I will start that conversation.
I think
Do
that's-
we ask for Attorney General's opinion or?
I don't know that we're to that point, but let me start the conversation.
Right.
It's already been,
It's already established.
what the funds, how the funds are.
There's no gray area. There's really not.
Obviously, there is,
Well, some people can interpret it as gray area, but legally there is no gray area.
and that's all the problems that we have, is litigation.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's an agreement. I mean, yeah, it's been going on for forever, but you know, it's just not a good practice.
No.
I mean, not when I'm responsible.
Legally, you have no access to that much. You're still responsible. You're still on the hook.
You can give me all kinds of bank reconciliations, but it may not tell you that.
Right.
You know, what's inside.
There you go.
I mean, best practice would be to run everything through your check and balance, which is your common account. They can keep separate balances in the common account, which is that on all the other funds. It's just, it is, I know, it's not fun.
I'm very confused. Well, I've never operated that way, so I don't understand how that. Okay.
I guess we'll get into that more down the road. Okay.
So the sheriff and the
Explanation.
chief judge should come before maybe the finance administration to justify why they are continuing to maintain the funds like that. And not,
Well, let me start that conversation.
I'm always looking for.
Getting tired of saying the same
Always
thing
looking
over
for
and over.
trouble.
Yeah, you.
And not trying to-
We've
Yeah,
been seeing that for
absolutely.
Yeah.
at least 9, 10 years and still not resolved.
I appreciate that. Thank you, sir.
It just doesn't happen to Isabel, by the way. It happens in a lot of. other
Yeah.
places.
That's okay.
But that doesn't make it right.
Right, it may be standard operating procedure, but I
you know,
don't ever
it's the-
can't.
it's the state of Michigan, if the auditors are telling us. The proper practice. Then, you know, the proper,
Mhm.
and have some backing with certain revenue.
Mhm.
Then the auditor, whoever's, you know, in charge of that, needs to come out and say, hey, look, this is what's gotta be. Say, all accounts except for, or.
Right.
All
right.
accounts. Right now, it's all accounts.
Right.
That's a good plan to go forward. I will restart that conversation.
Let's get into that a little bit.
So some of the other things that they found, and again, thank you, Melissa, for pointing out. So this is, we're in this letter document. And it's gonna be page A1 and A2. So besides that bank account, they do want us to put in place a process, for a formal policy in regards to bank reconciliations. So we perform our bank reconciliations. I think there's maybe upwards of 75 every month, if you can imagine. But we do those. And so when they come to audit fiscal 22, as you imagine, we have to have October through September done. And they're not done timely, I think is what led to this. Sometimes Chris will perform her bank reconciliations. Part of the process is for me to review them. They'll sit a little while before Nicole gets to review them. The bank reconciliation that Melissa does, the common bank, they're a little larger. And when you go from audit to budget, it's a little hard to sit down and spend a couple days on a bank reconciliation. So they're not always done timely. And it's just something we need to improve on. So we're going to look to develop a formal policy in that regard.
Like a countdown, like we talked about before,
Yeah.
the countdown
Yes,
schedule.
yes, exactly. By this point, we need to be at this, we need to have, by this point of the month, we need to have had certain ones done, right? Go
Again,
forward from
I
there.
don't know about you, that's something I'd like to see. Help see where that's going and
Yeah,
where we're in
it's-
that process and.
absolutely.
get a
Well,
report, so-
this board the full board will be responsible for establishing that policy if it's a
Right.
formal policy. So
Good.
you will definitely be
Okay.
seeing it.
That we're in it.
Kind of like a petty cash policy that
Yeah.
we adopted, that you adopted last year.
Hmm.
So they did point out that the county doesn't have a formal basically IT security or IT vendor policy. So that's something that we'll be working on as well. The state is now doing IT audits. Michelle has been very involved with those in the last few years. And they do those because of the federal tax information that's held by front of the court office and our prosecuting attorney's offices. And that's what triggers that audit from them.
Hmm.
But Michelle has really come a long way in the last couple of years, improving things because of those audits. So they also noted internal control of cash receipts, and I think this was just, we wanted to, this was timing of deposits, wasn't it? Cash receipts, we had one department that held some cash for a couple of months before they took it to the treasurer's office. And so they noted that, and
You
we
don't want
will-
that. timely
no,
funds
we
or-
don't want that, and I'm not sure timing wise. I think maybe there's some staffing turnover or something in that office that led to that. But that's just a
Just a-
discussion about best practice with the department heads and elected. Easily resolved.
Okay.
And they wanted a place on there who's taking the deposit to the bank, like to
Mhm.
know specifically who, even if it is the same person for 30 some years.
Yeah,
Want to know who did it.
yeah, it's paper, you need a paper trail there, yes.
Yes.
Um,
Unrecorded prior year depreciation expense, you see on page A2, wasn't recorded properly in regards to a drain district.
Hmm.
And something else on here that I want to take note, Lake Isabella receivables. So last thing on here, this is another repeat from last year that they would have mentioned at the time that they presented the audit. Last year, the Lake Isabella water supply customers were about a year behind in billing. This was a result of during COVID, we were instructed you can't turn water service off for people who are behind in their water payments. And so the drain office got lax on billing. Why bill if we have no
recourse.
recourse if they don't
Yeah.
pay? So we did get behind. I met with Drains last year and developed a plan to get ahead. And now with this audit, we're not really any further ahead. We're still about a year behind in billings. So I'm starting to hear in other places in the community where this is causing problems, right? When properties change place, change
Yeah, when you
hands
change
out there,
hands, who's
and you go to
responsible?
look to see,
Oh, yeah.
are there
Yeah.
any are there
Oh,
any
yeah.
outstanding? And then they come a year later, that's an issue.
Well,
So,
when you say they were behind on billings, is that on all of them or
Yes.
just the delinquent?
no, all of them. So they will go out and take the reads, right?
Uh-huh.
They have the reads to be able to do the billings. It's just that those billings are not being done timely out of the drain commission office. So it is something, like I said, I've met with Drain Commissioner Willoughby and Tim Warner, who really is the one that's certified and oversees the water system
Mhm.
on a plan, and we're just not getting there. So we're gonna have to figure out. We're gonna have to figure out something to get them caught up. And what a tough thing for the homeowners too, right? Yeah, we could do an annual bill and go here and get all caught up. But what's that gonna do to your delinquent list, right? What's that gonna do? You can't maybe afford a year's worth of
Right. How do you-
water at once.
how do
So I think that's been the mentality of the drain office to, only bill a couple months at a time, but they're just not getting any traction.
How do we ever, I know this is kind of off topic, but how do we ever get involved with the water system out of Lake Isabella? I know the drain commissioner, probably legislation allows for that, but how did we ever buy into it?
I think why is a better question than how, but it
Either one.
traditionally, yes, counties don't have a place at the table for water systems in this regard usually. We're the only county at the Water Association conference. I guarantee it, right? It has to do with Baseline Road apparently it has to do with the park, it has to do,
Become a village,
yes.
and they had no authority, so. They had one.
And they wanted to, so they had to do it through Board of Public Works.
That was the only, that was the only legal.
Now that the village, they won't take it over. Talks about the park and. The reason that we have Gilmore Park out there is because,
Mhm.
allow them to do some other things and. Now they want the park back and.
I have a meeting with.
The public would become unglued if we gave that parkland up.
Well, I want you guys to hear this too. So during this meeting I had with Tim, one of the things I want to bring up is this water issue. What's the history there? Why won't they take it back?
Can't afford
Kind
it.
of costly. If you run the right way with the right water prices and things, I'm not sure.
I think, they can't afford it. Plus so in order to operate a public water supply system, you've got to be certified, you've got to be trained, there's a lot of money to, it costs a lot of money to
Get it off the ground.
employ that person, right? To be able to do that and keep them up to speed. So the
Right.
village they're limited to 1 mil levy in their charter. So it's not like they can just open up a DPW.
Right.
And hire more people to manage the system. Systems should pay for themselves, but
Yeah.
there's so much, I think, deferred maintenance maybe on the system that we've got to get it up to speed before anybody will consider taking it over, I would think.
We put a generator out there, right, Jerry? I mean, way back when we went to the. United States, whatever we used to buy from surplus. And we purchased a generator we put out there to help with that brand new one, you know, many years ago. Back when you were with Parks, I'm pretty sure. And there is maintenance, there's water quality kind of things you have to keep up with and. I don't know, something to talk to him about.
Well, I talked about that, the general impression I'm getting is we're kind of stuck with it. Is the impression I'm getting is we're just.
Yes, and I feel like we are, and I feel like we're gonna have to bring it, we're gonna have to polish it in order to consider any other possibility of anybody taking it over.
I'll just start a conversation with them.
I think we have opportunities with our local city of Mount Pleasant, Union Township, Saginaw Chippewa Indian Tribe, who also have water supply systems, also employ water supply operators that, you know, they would work in partnership with us on it rather than it be a part of a county department. Maybe.
Okay, I'll start a conversation.
Somewhat.
See where this goes. Appreciate that. Very enlightening.
More to come on that
Okay.
topic for sure. Mhm. It's another one. of
Sorry
those that
taking
keeps
off
surfacing.
topic.
That's-
That's
No,
all right.
I appreciate
why we
that.
need
Thank you.
discussion.
So I needed that, so. Information.
Oh, so that was sorry, you're looking at me. That was the last comment and recommendation they had for improvement for us.
Oh,
Sure.
I do have one, thanks. As far as Drain Commission. Should we ask Commissioner Willoughby to come talk with us about? I know we kind of broached this before about them being behind on billing. We're now several months into this. We've loaned them, what, 150,000?
200?
200, yeah, we loaned them 200 to get them over the hump, temporarily.
Part of the reason why I will say that was part of the reason why I was a little more adamant that it be more of a loan. I feel with having the conversation a year ago and not being in any different place.
Mhm. Well, that's where you and I, when we talked about that here, was that we felt it better to be a loan as opposed to the flat dollar amount that they just keep working with. And I feel like we ought to have him come and talk about what steps he's putting in place or what process he's beginning, at least to get him caught up with the billing, not just for Lake Isabella, but in general. Because they know that's the problem, because that's where the money's tied up,
Mhm.
is in the billing process. And what steps is he taking? I think that's something,
Absolutely.
I think that's something we should do, is have him come talk to us and tell us what kind of progress, have a progress report, if you will.
Mhm.
Okay.
Absolutely. That's best to do that.
Any other, did you want to talk about any of the future and changes, the GASB or?
Unless you guys have questions, I am good.
Well, I don't think we need to make a motion to move this on. It's gonna be in our work session, right?
It is, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
Back in the back of it, there's legislative personnel. The drop from 7 to 1.9.
Oh, I wonder if we're not doing FTEs before in the,
Well, full-time FTEs, he's been bold
right,
and considered full-time.
the drop from 7 to 1.9. Is that because we were considering 7? We were considering that. Well, I think we're considering it as FTEs, or what's the FTE equivalent of?
There was not much consistency in what we were using for the audit. There's difference in audit, the budget, so we said for this year, we need to decide which way, if we look at both ways. The board, there's 7 gentlemen or 7 bodies. But in our audit, we base it on, it's not their position is not a full-time.
Equivalent.
37.5 hour.
Yes, sir.
It's not treated that way.
Oh,
What's put me down as?
One full-time, you're a 37.5 hour, you're elected, but it's.
As an elected official. elected officials. These guys
Oh.
are elected officials also.
Because of the whole, you can work one day a year and that, or, you know,
Whatever,
that,
yeah.
right,
It's-
right.
These guys are elected
Statutorily, you
officials
don't
as
have to.
well. And
I know we're considered 1.4. As a group, we're considered 1.4.
Right.
Okay, 'cause I was looking at that, going, it's an interesting concept.
Yes.
But-
I'm just curious.
Well, and if we want to represent it differently, we can, right? I mean, if this is just
that's
our interpretation of,
Our interpretation, and just to keep it consistent, 'cause it has been different. Cut it into budget, you know, spend 1.89. 1.89
she know.
based on the number of, I'm not sure how many number of hours that is. Divided. Yeah, that's something we can look into, or even get, more information on them,
Well, their salary,
a recommended, what was that?
so they're not judged by hour, 37 and a
Right.
half. They're in a set amount. And they make set by the board. No matter what that is, that would make them full time.
Well, I think the most important thing is, what does it look like to the end user of the document, right? Is 1.9 misleading to someone who picks up that document? You know, if 7 makes more sense, then maybe we move to that and go for it. It's all about, what does this mean to who's,
Perception.
we know, we get it, we
Well, I
get
get
why.
If
It
you
might
wanna
be
put note
1.9.
I'm just bringing it up.
Yeah, no, it's,
It's a little deceiving going, we had 7 legislators for
it look,
the last 10 years and all of a sudden we have a 1.9.
yeah,
You've got a footnote on the bottom. I would think that would be a,
gotcha.
how you.
There's no room in the budget for
Yeah.
your position.
Our budget is very tight, we needed that $7,000 per gentleman, so.
Yeah.
we-
Well, I was looking at it more like a competency level. I'm thinking, well, we can't really say 7 because well, that would be overstating. We'd have scaled that back.
If it's at 7, we could go to the Department of Labor because we're not even making minimum wage.
No, no.
Yeah. Ooh.
Like me.
Yeah.
Elected official.
I feel like that's not making I feel like that document's getting, well, or could it make the final? If we moved it back to 7, could it make the final? Or is he,
I will have, because I think they're printing.
I think they're printing as we talk,
As we speak.
as we speak.
Or I think they're waiting for this meeting to finish, to get them that, those final. So,
Gotcha.
good,
Well, that's the one thing if it makes better sense to,
If not, next year.
yeah,
so not yet.
Yeah.
Moving
And
forward.
it'll reflect in the budget that way, this next is budget, and
Yeah,
we don't want it to
start
say 1.89 the way that it's set it for the last 8 years, then we can change it in the budget. to be
Yeah.
7.
yeah,
And so they
yeah.
mirror, we're just trying to. for it to mirror.
What's 1.89 divided by 7? What is that? Point 0.23 to what?
Yeah,
0.27, and I think that was based off of, and I hate to say it's been like that forever, but since
Yeah.
that year, what is that, maybe a 10 or 15 hour a week?
14.
Or, okay,
Yeah,
compared to a
You know,
37 and a half hours.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
how that.
Yeah, so I figured 14 hours a week. Yeah, that's all we should have to do.
we could have you guys,
If it was hourly.
we could have you guys report your time and then it's really accurate every year. Be like, you could see the correlation between
Mm,
legislative action
Yeah, in hours.
and yeah, performance.
Mhm.
Also, the difference between working and retirement.
Mhm.
Oh, God, me, I know. Can't see that.
So if we don't have anything else, we'll move on to our next item then,
Yeah.
which will be the invoice list discussion. The first one is March 3rd. The only thing I even shown here is I see we have a 5th tax disbursement. I always think of tax disbursement being quarterly or something. But, and we have 5th, it doesn't work out that way, right? As the money's come in, you keep sending it out or?
During this period of time, yes, during settlement. Yes, we have, and we had another, as well, but, yeah, the money that's coming in right now, we are settling with all the townships. So they're paying us their last collections, and then we're, paying out to them, back to them. So it's the same.
Okay, so we could actually have a sixth disbursement.
Oh, what's this one?
I think this is the last.
This is the last one.
Yeah, our last, every 15 days.
Yes, it is. Yeah, because it's to all, it's to, yeah,
Okay,
everybody.
Credit Isabella and
You got it.
intermediates. And
Yep.
Yeah, that's
Yep.
the.
okay. And then I looked at the 44 North, the monthly international pharmacy and direct source RX charges.
Mhm.
This is our first payment for pharmacy. Is that
Yes.
pretty much what we thought it would be?
No, actually, it's a little higher.
It's a little bit higher.
It's a little higher. Good eye. So what we assumed at budget time last year was that going with Blue Cross Blue Shield, the county would spend about $700,000 on prescriptions. And by going self-insured, we would spend about $600,000. So at $35,000 for a month, we are not on track. However, what I learned was a lot of those are the 90-day supply prescriptions.
Yeah, so
Oh,
the first, because I'm on that, so
okay.
yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
Hit them
yes.
hard with the
So
90-day.
we're not gonna look at 35 every month. So
So we should look at quarterly. Right.
that would, yes,
I would
that
say-
would be a little healthier, probably
Yeah,
than
let's do it.
time by time, but
Yeah.
very good point.
We
It
should
is
start off
not
here and go.
excellent here. Yes, if it's truly the 90-day supply, raising that number up, what you just said is, should be.
That's what we
be
should see.
exactly true.
Unless there's enough offset 90-day supplies that keep it at that level.
That's true.
That's some high level analysis there.
But if that's the case, we might be in trouble, right? As far as expenses go,
Yes, and so
36,000 a month.
so we'll keep an eye on that through the year. It's our so we have a self-insurance fund that sits, so, well, shouldn't call it self-insurance fund, but I think that's what we call it. Every time there's a payroll that hits, there's a budgeted expense that is drawn from every department and feeds into this self-insurance fund over here.
Mhm.
That's how we fund that HRA that's unknown, right? We buy this high deductible plan, use the internal HRA to fund it down, but that's all unknown and that's all at the county risk. So at budget time, we try to do a really good job of saying, how much should that expense be that's pulled every payroll? We look at that throughout the year. So if those percentages are getting off kilter, we will do a budget amendment,
And we'll have
to-
to adjust it upwards.
adjust it upwards. Yep.
Okay,
Exactly.
so we have a vehicle by which we can,
Called budget
Right.
amendment.
yeah, rectify.
And paying attention to those, your budget through the year.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we don't want to freak out with those figures right now,
Yeah,
just like we don't want to freak out with the tax income coming in early part of the year. So we got two things
I
now.
don't know. Depends on the percentage.
mhm.
And then the other question I had is on integrated architecture. We have architectural services payments still going out. Is that just, I was thinking that we had all our drawings and everything ready. Is that modifications as this moves forward
It
or?
is. So that's that double-edged sword. Sheriff's been working so hard on that value engineering that we talk about, right? To shave costs off the project. When you change anything, the architect's got to draw it again. Right?
Mm.
It's gotta make it to the prints. So a lot of these two invoices that you see on here are from that work. And I know that specifically because these invoices were held up until they could get us an explanation of that work, because it was charged differently, if you will, than their original contract work with us. But you're gonna see integrated architecture invoices continue because they work with us throughout construction for any changes like that. And then we'll want to make sure, at the end, they'll give us as-built of that facility. And it's really important that any field changes in the field to, anything constructed, make their way into those as-built. And integrated architecture will be responsible for that. So you're gonna continue to see payments to them throughout the life of the project. they've been paid a little over 2 million by now, I feel like, and we have maybe 300 or 400,000 left on that contract.
Other questions or on the list?
I'm trying to see if I have. them. No, one of these I do.
We can get you some sticky tabs. if you want.
What's on the other one? Nope, I don't see it here. Okay, I think it's on the next one. Yeah. okay. Yeah, no question on this.
All right, we'll move on to the March 10th list. Since the sheriff is here, I'm gonna ask him why we see more Cisco and not as much of the food.
That's actually why I stopped. We can do a public comment, but if you got a second, I'll address it. So,
Come on in, sir.
it, basic supply and demand. We can't get some of the stuff through Gordon, so we've had to move over to Cisco. They check Gordon's often, for our stuff. They are negotiating, trying to get a 2% versus a 1% reduction from Cisco. We're still in that negotiation stage, but it's just sometimes you can't get bread or sometimes you can't get this and that. So I think if Gordon comes back online and can get our stuff, we'll be back to Gordon, but that's kind of why. And Nicole had mentioned it to me, and I should have brought it up to your attention because I know it's something you guys talk about almost every meeting. You mentioned the discount that you get.
Yeah.
But yeah, when you can't get the supplies, we've had to
So
venture out.
my experience, I've found that Gordon's Food Service usually gives us better pricing overall.
Mhm.
So I've kind of had to work with them because they would have issues with shortages and,
You know,
unable to get them. Now, by using Cisco, is the overall expense getting greater using them, even though you're getting all the
don't-
product you need?
I don't think we're getting as good of discount because we get that early
Right.
discount. So I think that's the problem. That's why we're
Mm.
trying to negotiate at 2%. And they said they would do a 2%. We just can't seem to get them to move the needle. They're giving us a 1% discount, but we'd like to get a 2% discount, which I think will bridge that gap between Gordon's discount that we get and
Right.
what we're getting from Cisco. So
Right.
we're hoping at some point Gordon's can get the product, and it's not Gordon's fault. I mean, it's
No,
just,
yeah.
it's systemic
Supply
across the
issue-
country, right?
supply
So,
chain issue,
yeah,
right?
you know. So when you have special diets and needs and stuff like that, we have to make sure we're complying with that. So we have to reach out, but
All the restaurants that I worked with, we went from Cisco to Gordon's only because they gave better pricing and better
Yep.
service.
yep.
But now you're running into that, which I thought was surprising to me because my experience, I had dealt with that before.
Yep.
Usually Gordon's is on the.
And
On
we've
the
never
ball.
had that problem up till about 6 months now, or a little more that we've had just things where they just couldn't get for us. So.
Yeah, gotta do what you gotta do.
Yeah.
Understand, okay.
Thank you.
Hopefully that answered your question.
That answers-
Thank you, sir.
Other questions on this short list?
Yes, found it. Gilbo's. Lock and safe. Repair and maintenance, rekeying of office and interior and exterior doors. That's what, $2,000, $2,500,
What department are you on?
central,
Central dispatch.
so they had to rekey everything.
They did. They did.
As a Mr. Griffiths. I'm just. I
He's still
saw
with
that.
us, so,
Oh,
we did
well,
not,
did they lock him out?
I feel like. And now we'll defer to Mark, and maybe I'll have him come make a comment or ask him to for Tuesday or educate me so I can, but. I feel like this has to do, you remember the lightning strike at Central Dispatch? That was a couple of years ago, and we're still to the point of getting the new equipment installed. And it was causing an issue with the door, like, the sheriff is helping out again. Come on, please, if you know why.
I am not Mark Griffiths, so it's not, let's get that straight.
Worked the other day, though, it was you.
I think you did
Sitting
say
right
that you
there.
were Mark Griffiths.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So the real
Only
one-
one
It is.
It's convenient.
I know from having lots of conversations with Mark, and I don't want to speak for him, and but I think this is echoing what he's been telling us is he is holding on to the last payment to this project because there are some things that aren't functioning. One is, and the door seems simple, right? But that's one of those things like, you put $1 million system in and you used to open your door from the consoles, it should be open the doors from now correctly. And some of the other stuff, and I don't know all the pieces, but our school safety radios that we have out there are functioning not at 100%. They are functioning, but typically dispatch could send out an alert and open them all up for an emergency. Now they have to do individually. So this it used to be doesn't work with a brand new system. And I think there's a lot of, this person says, well, it's this person and they're trying to, tie the wires together to make all that work. I think that's just a couple of examples or maybe a few other ones that he's holding on to, but that's kind of where some of that's all still in play, trying to.
You're spending all that kind of money.
Well, yeah, it should work as good as the old system, if not
Maybe a little
better, right?
Not
So
better,
that's the thought process.
Right.
So,
Thank you. You
All right.
speak
Appreciate
Mark
it.
much better than I do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I thought you were gonna say better than Mark does.
Why did you say that?
So proud here.
If they did it because of Mark, I'm just kind of curious as to why and.
He did it because of Mark, because the Mark demands his system is equal or
Oh,
better than it
but-
was.
I mean, I thought they were locking him out. For some reason. I'm just curious as to why. Is there something there I don't know?
No,
Oh,
had
okay.
nothing to do with any staff change at all, thank God. That's-
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Good catch.
Uh,
Great question.
That was pretty much it. So. It's not aging, it's got pages and pages.
I guess I should add the door, this is one question, the door. They've got a workaround right now, like a garage door opener, that's what they, Procter and Gamble is done, so until this gets fixed, so they don't. Dispatchers don't have to get from their workstations around and one call to answer a door.
Seems like best practice.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, I think that was the only one I really had.
We'll give you a moment to thumb through your last pages. Any other questions? Comments on that list? All right, that'll end the discussion then. We'll go to announcements. The only announcement I'm gonna kind of make is just, I know we're looking at a 2% request from one of the other committees for refurbishment of some wells out at Lake Isabella. And I picked up,
No, it's not a 2% app request. On the HR committee this morning, I'm sorry to interrupt you like that, but we went out for bid on those 2 wells and it's a contract with Peerless that's on the agenda. It's not a 2% application.
it wasn't a 2% application?
No,
Okay,
sir. No, sir.
I missed that then. All
I
right,
think almost everything else on that agenda and on our other agendas are all 2% applications. But that agenda had the contract with Peerless and then Jake had a couple of equipment purchases for the mark.
okay, never mind. Any other announcements?
I have one, registrations open for the MAC Legislative Conference in Lansing. April 24th, 25th, and 26th, and it looks like they have some really good, breakout sessions. Impact of electrical vehicle adoption on road funding, trial court funding.
Oh, yeah, all good info.
Land banks, that's when I went to last year. That was interesting. Opiate funding from the national settlement. Robert's rules. Juvenile justice reform and funding. So it's
There you go.
really good.
All things that we got our
Some
fingers.
interesting breakout sessions there. If anybody's interested, I'll mention that at the board meeting as well. But
I know I'm interested. in several of those.
And
Jessica, no, sure.
I did like your email to Commissioner Frost about considering that if there's an application for the next funding source,
yeah,
then you can get that in. But you're probably aware of that, so.
Yes, on the opioid settlement, yes, so that'll come it didn't come in time to to hold up the agenda even further for this round of meetings, but we'll get those documents so that they're in by the April 18th deadline, I think it is.
Okay, other announcements?
I have none.
We'll do a call to public.
I have a question. I hate to backtrack, but, the auditors write up on the bank reconciliations. I mean, if they want a policy on that. I know you talked about your staff doing bank recs, and I know we sat down with the auditors and we talked about that. We do bank recs. Ours are done timely. I mean, my policy, you know,
Yeah, so my understanding is that when the auditors come on site, they will only review the bank recs, or the bank recs that they review have to be done in our general ledger system, have to be done in BSNA. And so that's my understanding of why you're doing it, we're doing it. Ours are in BSNA and ours are what I think is not being done timely. If you're doing them, you're doing them timely, but because they're not in BSNA, we can't consider those the official ones. Am I saying this correct? Pretty
state law considers ours the official.
apparently our auditors don't.
Well, the treasury considers ours. It's the state law.
Sure,
The bank
but
recs-
I mean, the treasury doesn't get into BSNA and audit our financials
Well,
too,
I mean,
right?
I haven't seen any laws that says you must use PSNA to do your bank reconciliations.
I don't think it's a law. I think it's because that's where our financial statements reside. That's where our general ledger is in BSNA. So I feel like that's why the auditors say that our bank recs have to be done in BSNA. So I know we've talked, the redundancy kills me because it's days and for each of us a month. So I think this formal policy, I think we can work through that, right? We can work through who's gonna do it, how do we get it in BSNA
Okay,
best? That's my understanding of why they comment on that. They are, your bank recs are getting done timely. We wouldn't have gotten that comment if they had been looking at yours, but my understanding is they don't, they look at ours.
I mean, they just go through a policy. Right.
Well, that's their recommended fix, is for us to adopt a formal policy as to how bank reconciliations are gonna be handled.
But on the back end, they're saying they must go through the SNA.
Yes. Yes.
Wherever, wherever the general ledger is.
If we stopped doing them and they came on site and only did yours, I think we would get a write-up for not having bank reconciliations done. Is my understanding. Let's
The only
talk.
thing- The only thing done through the SNA is the outstanding checks.
Check clearing happens through the bank rec.
But I think you actually do all the other ones through
Deposits and
BSNA. bank.
transfers.
Journal entries, everything going to BSNA.
Mhm. Yes. We'll work through it and we're working together on it. We just need to figure it out so that we're not spending days a month and it's redundancy,
I see,
not the good
yeah,
thing.
I see massive
Inefficiency.
inefficiency and redundancy. That's not necessary.
Yeah.
But I'll ask questions about that on. I'll ask questions of him later. I don't want to take up your time.
So we went back to the treasurer for some business. So that means maybe we're still open to the floor for another question before we go to call.
Well,
public.
Mr. Chairman, that's
You're the chair- you're the chairman.
You've got all the power to-
Well, I don't want to be impeached by doing the wrong thing. So
Not a chance, because I won't
with
second.
the sheriff's office, county jail facility, have we met all the requirements for that now? Do we have to have something symbolic, like breaking ground, or do we need to have some kind of a event out there with a golden shovel?
Yes, we'll have a groundbreaking,
Okay, 'cause-
absolutely.
And do we have to do that by a certain time
We can have that conversation.
at the
offline
work session?
after the meeting.
Talking more warmer weather, but we're still jumping through some hurdles. So. And we can't, construction can't start. I don't think we're gonna make construction on that deadline because they can't even move equipment because of the road restrictions. So.
Well, if need be, I can bring my four-wheel drive John Deere out. We could turn a bucket of dirt or something.
That's my angle. It's our property.
Right.
We've got a soil erosion permit. Let's go have some fun with some big equipment.
Just gotta get it there.
I was getting all excited about golden
Airdrop?
shovels and
Airdrop?
golden scissors, big scissors.
Oh, yes, there'll be.
Where is that?
Golden scissors and.
Yeah, I want golden shovels and
hats
golden,
and-
yeah, and I want
Yes.
golden hat, golden helmets,
Yes.
hard hats.
It will be planned. Maybe that's something we should talk about at the special meeting. But that's
Yeah,
our goal for,
I know where we can get golden shovels.
Yeah.
You do, wow.
I got spray paint.
Clerk said they have that, they'll
Yeah.
supply all those for us, so.
Will they?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Small amount of fee, but
So we'll do a call to the public now. No public. We'll then adjourn the meeting of the Finance and Administration Committee at 11:20, 11:19 or so. Has that clock been changed?